In the ever-twisting corridors of Port Charles, Friday, May 2 brought another layer of chaos, confrontation, and calculated decisions to General Hospital. Underneath the pretense of reconciliation and revelation, personal agendas rose to the surface. Lulu Spencer's emotional reawakening collided with unresolved resentment. Tracy Quartermain's no-nonsense pragmatism butted against Brooke Lynn's fragile vulnerability, and Nina Reeves found herself treading a perilous line between truth and treachery. Meanwhile, in the heart of a growing medical conspiracy, Portia Robinson began spinning a web that might not hold much longer. As the gears of fate continued turning, each character was pushed closer to the edge, some by guilt, others by fear, and a few by sheer desperation. At the center of the storm was Lulu Spencer, still adjusting to life after her coma, trying to reclaim her voice in a world that moved on without her. Her interaction with Dante Falconeri revealed more than just romantic tension. It exposed a festering wound between herself and those she once called allies. When Dante attempted to explain Brooke Lynn's situation with the sensitivity he could muster, Lulu couldn't help but interpret it as yet another sign that her pain didn't matter. The adoption story that resurfaced wasn't merely about Brooke Lynn's past. It was a symbol to Lulu of everything she'd missed, everything that had passed her by while she lay unconscious. Though she tried to maintain composure, the bitter undertone in her voice was undeniable. Why is everyone else's pain more valid than mine? Laura Collins had encouraged Lulu to proceed with caution, to take time before diving into complicated emotional battles. But her patience is wearing thin. Instead of staying silent, Lulu pressed forward, questioning Dante with thinly veiled hostility. Her comments weren't random, they were calculated jabs, designed to provoke reactions, to make her feel seen, even if it meant dragging up painful memories. In her mind, this wasn't just about a child Brooke Lynn gave away. It was about being sidelined in her own narrative, and that realization hurt more than she could admit. Elsewhere, in a more grounded corner of the Quartermain estate, Brooke Lynn found herself face to face with the ever-sharp Tracy Quartermain. What began as a casual check-in quickly transformed into an intimate conversation after Brooke Lynn's impromptu confession about the child she once gave up. The truth weighed heavy on her chest, and the act of speaking it out loud didn't bring relief, it brought regret. Tracy, for all her bluster and often icy demeanor, handled the admission with more grace than one might expect. She didn't jump to judge or scold. Instead, she asked the question that mattered most: do you regret it? It was a piercing question, one that Brooke Lynn herself hadn't fully answered. The silence between them hung for a moment too long, suggesting the answer wasn't simple. Perhaps she did. Perhaps not. Perhaps it was more about wishing she had handled things differently. Tracy, in a rare show of emotional insight, connected the dots between Brooke Lynn's bitterness toward Lulu and the ghost of the baby she let go. She saw through the rage, the avoidance, the defensive sarcasm. And though she didn't press further, it was clear, Tracy intended to fix this somehow. Whether Brooke Lynn liked it or not. Meanwhile, across town, a different kind of confrontation was brewing. Carly Spencer had come prepared, armed not with accusations, but with footage, damning footage. She confronted Nina Reeves with video evidence suggesting foul play involving Drew Kane. Her tone wasn't outright accusatory, but the implication was clear. She knew something wasn't right, and she suspected Nina had a hand in it. Nina, never one to be caught flat-footed, responded with practiced composure. But beneath her calm exterior, a storm of panic stirred. She had, in fact, played a role in what happened to Drew, just not as overtly as Carly might have imagined. With Portia's help and Brad Cooper's reluctant assistance, Nina had orchestrated a distraction designed to delay Drew's access to the truth. Now that he was actively seeking answers, they had to move quickly. Too quickly. Drew's confusion was justified. He hadn't consumed anything unusual, yet something had clearly affected him. The results of his blood test were supposed to provide clarity. Instead, they introduced another layer of doubt. The toxicology report came back clean, or so it seemed. But anyone who knew Portia understood that her medical integrity had a price when it came to protecting her secrets. And Nina, with her world crumbling, had every reason to call in favors. Brad, under immense pressure, had agreed to manipulate the report. He didn't like it, and he made that clear. But Portia reminded him what was at stake: her career, her reputation, and the very hospital that had barely survived its last scandal. One false move and everything could unravel. The false test results bought them time, but only just. Max Scorpio, ever diligent, was starting to connect the dots. A man like Drew doesn't collapse without cause. And a blood test with no answers was a red flag that couldn't be ignored. Carly's instincts were sharper than most gave her credit for, and if she kept digging, the whole truth would eventually come to light. As the day drew to a close, the lives of several Port Charles residents had veered off course. Lulu's resentment bubbled dangerously close to an eruption, threatening to reopen old wounds and expose long-buried secrets. Brooke Lynn's fragile calm was now shattered by the weight of a truth she could no longer ignore. Tracy was scheming, not maliciously, but with the kind of determination that always caused collateral damage. And Nina? She stood on a knife's edge, her lies pressed between the gears of a machine far more complex than she realized. In the shadowy quiet of General Hospital's corridors, trust frayed, alliances shifted, and secrets trembled under the weight of exposure. One test result. One whispered confession. One suspicious glance. That's all it would take to set everything ablaze. And for now, all anyone could do was brace themselves for the inevitable reckoning. Because in Port Charles, no secret stays buried forever. Would you like this story continued into the next episode's events?